Hello students, greetings of the day. So this is the continuation of our second unit from trade to territory. Okay. So in our last class we have saw about the establishment of political power by the English East India Company. That is about the Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar. Then about the three Carnatic Wars. That is the first Carnatic War was fought between the year 1746 to 1748. The second Carnatic War was fought between the year 1749 to 1754, and the third Carnatic War was fought between 1756 to 1763. Okay. Then we have also saw about the Battle of Arcot, then about the Treaty of Pondicherry. Okay. So then we have learned about the Mysore and its resistance to the British expansion. That is about the first Anglo-Mysore War, second Anglo-Mysore War, third Anglo-Mysore War, and fourth Anglo-Mysore War. Okay. So in this class we are going to learn about the Anglo-Maratha Wars. Okay. So there are three Anglo-Maratha Wars are there. That is first Anglo-Maratha War, second Anglo-Maratha War, third Anglo-Maratha War. Okay. So the Marathas, they managed to overcome the crisis caused by their defeat at Panipat, and after the decade recovered their control over Delhi. Okay. However, the old Maratha confederacy controlled by the Peshwa had given way to 5 virtually independent states. So the Marathas, they managed to overcome the danger which was created at the defeat of Panipat. Okay. So then, however, the old Marathas alliance, confederation means it is an alliance. Okay. So it was controlled by the Peshwa, and it had given the way to form 5 independent states. Okay. That is the Peshwa at Pune, Gaikwadas at Baroda, Bhonsle at Nagpur, Holkars at Indore, and Scindias at Gwalior. So these are the 5 independent states. The Peshwa's government was weakened by the internal rivalries, and the other 4 leaders were often hostile to one another. Okay. So how this Peshwa's government get weakened? Because of the internal affairs between these 5 independent states. Okay. So despite of this, the Marathas were still they remained as a big power. Okay. The internal conflict among the Marathas were best utilized by the British. So already we have known that this there is an internal rivalry between these 5 independent states of Marathas. Okay. So the British, they used this internal conflicts to expand their policy. Okay. That is to expand their British territories in India. So first Anglo-Maratha War. So it was fought between the year 1775 to 1782. Okay. So first let us see about the causes for this first Anglo-Maratha War. So in the case of the Marathas, the first British intervention was at the time of dispute over succession to the Peshwaship following the death of Narayana Rao. Okay. So the first British intervention took place during the dispute that rose between the Peshwaship after the death of Narayana Rao. Okay. So after the death of Narayan Rao, Raghunath Rao became the Peshwa, but his authority was challenged by a strong party at Pune under Nana Fadnavis. Okay. So after the death of this Narayana Rao, who became the next Peshwa? That is Raghunath Rao. Okay. But this Raghunath Rao was opposed by the other party under Nana Fadnavis. Okay. So the party recognized the infant born posthumously to Narayan Rao's wife Gangabai. So what is meant by posthumously? That is, this baby, this infant was born after the death of the Peshwa. Okay. So the other parties, they supported this infant born baby to as the Peshwa, and they set up a council of regency on his name. Okay. So having failed in his bid to capture power, Raghunath Rao approached the British for help. So the Treaty of Surat between the English and Raghunath Rao was concluded in 1775. Okay. So after that, the Raghunath Rao, he approached the British to help him. Okay. So therefore a treaty was concluded between the English and Raghunath Rao in the year 1775. So however, the majority of the Supreme British Council in Calcutta was opposed to the Surat Treaty, although Warren Hastings himself had no objection to ratifying the treaty. So Warren Hastings had no objection against this treaty of Surat. Okay. So the council sent Colonel Upton to Pune to negotiate a peace with the Pune Regency. So accordingly, Upton concluded the Treaty of Purandar in 1776. Okay, so in 1776 a treaty was signed and it was known as the Treaty of Purandar. So the treaty, however, did not take effect due to the opposition from English government in Bombay. Okay, so this treaty was not came into existence because there is an opposition from the English government in Bombay. Okay. Next, in 1781, Warren Hastings dispatched British troops under Captain Popham. He defeated the Maratha chief Mahadaji Scindia in a number of small battles and captured Gwalior. So in 1781, Warren Hastings he sent the British troops under Captain Popham. Okay, so this captain he defeated the Maratha chief in a number of small battle and he captured the place called Gwalior. So later on 17th May 1782, the Treaty of Salbai was signed between Warren Hastings and Mahadaji Scindia, because in this battle Mahadaji Scindia was defeated by the British. Okay, so therefore a treaty was signed between Warren Hastings and Mahadaji Scindia and this treaty was known as the Treaty of Salbai. Okay, so what's the result of this first Anglo-Maratha war? So what's the result? So the Raghunath Rao was pensioned off and Mahadav Rao II was accepted as the Peshwa. So as a result of this war, Raghunath Rao was given pension and Madhav Rao II was accepted as the Peshwa. Okay. Then Salsette, so it is a place and it was given to the British. Next, the Treaty of Salbai established the British influence in Indian politics. It provided the British 20 years of peace with the Marathas. So this was the result of first Anglo-Maratha war. Okay. Next, the internal affairs of the Marathas. So the internal affairs of the Marathas deteriorated further after the close of first Maratha war. So Nana Fadnavis grew fond of power, jealous of Mahadaji Scindia and became progressively inclined to seek the support of English. Okay, so this Nana Fadnavis he grow and he fond of power and he is jealous on Mahadaji Scindia. So this Nana Fadnavis he approached the British for their support. Okay, the young Peshwa Madhava Rao II tried to improve the affairs but could not check the rivalry of the Maratha chiefs. So this Madhava Rao II he tried to improve the affairs between the Mahadaji Scindia and Nana Fadnavis, but he never checked about the rivalry of the Maratha chiefs. So the Mahadaji Scindia died in 1794 and he was succeeded by his grandnephew Daulat Rao Scindia. So his death left Nana Fadnavis supreme to Pune. So after the death of this Mahadaji Scindia, Nana Fadnavis became the supreme power in Pune and the English to expand, and it helps the English also to expand their influence in North India. Peshwa Mahadav Rao II committed suicide in 1795 and Bajirao II, worthless son of Raghunath Rao, became the next Peshwa. So the death of Nana Fadnavis in 1800 gave the British an added advantage for them. Okay. So Jaswant Rao Holkar and Daulat Rao Scindia were fighting against each other. Okay. So next, the Jaswant Rao Holkar and Daulat Rao Scindia, they were fighting against each other. So here the Peshwa supported Scindia against Holkar. So who was supported by Peshwa? The Peshwa he supported the Scindia. Okay. So the Peshwa and the Scindia they agreed to help each other. So Holkar he marched against the Peshwa to the British. So the combined forces of Scindia and the Peshwa were utterly defeated in 1802 and captured the city and they captured the city. Then Bajirao II, he approached Lord Wellesley, the then Governor General of India. So at that time, who is the Governor General of India? Lord Wellesley. So Bajirao II, he approached Lord Wellesley for the help. So Lord Wellesley, he welcomed the Peshwa Bajirao II and made him to sign a treaty called the Treaty of Basin. Okay. So otherwise, this Treaty of Basin is also known as the Treaty of Subsidiary Alliance. So accepting the status of a British subsidiary in 1802. So according to this treaty, the Peshwa, he accepts the status of British subsidiary. So as an immediate to the Treaty of Basin, the British troops marched under the command of Arthur Wellesley towards Poona and restored the Peshwa to his position. Okay. So according to this treaty, Lord Wellesley, with his troops, he marched to Poona and he restored the position to the Peshwa. So the forces of Holkar vanished from the Maratha capital. So the forces of Holkar was sent out of the Maratha capital. So next one, the second Anglo-Maratha War. So the next one is second Anglo-Maratha War. So first we have to see about the causes for the second Anglo-Maratha War. So the second Anglo-Maratha War was fought between the year 1803 to 1805. Okay. So what is the causes for the second Anglo-Maratha War? Let us see now. So after accepted the subsidiary alliance by the Peshwa, Daulat Rao Scindia and Rahoji Bhonsle attempted to save Maratha's independence. But the well-prepared and organized army of the English under Arthur Wellesley defeated the combined armies of Scindia and Bhonsle at Ashiye and Aragon. Okay. So first the Peshwa, he accepted the subsidiary alliance which was given by the British. Then now this Daulat Rao Scindia and Rahoji Bhonsle, they wanted to save the independence of the Marathas. So but the well-prepared armies of the English under General Arthur Wellesley, they defeated the combined forces of Scindia and Bhonsle at a place called Ashiye and Aragon. Okay. So next one, course of the second Anglo-Maratha War. The English forced them to conclude separate subsidiary treaties, namely the Treaty of Diogon and the Treaty of Sergi-Argonne respectively in 1803. So in this second Anglo-Maratha War, this Scindia and Rahoji Bhonsle was defeated by the British Viceroy, that is General Arthur Wellesley. Okay. So therefore, these two persons, they have to conclude a treaty with the British. So namely the two treaties are Treaty of Diogon and the Treaty of Sergi-Argonne. Okay. So this treaty was signed in the year 1803. But Yashwant Rao Holkar was yet undefeated. So because this Yashwant Rao Holkar, he did not participate in the war. So he was not defeated by the British. So now what that Holkar did means, he plundered all the wealth of the Jaipur. Okay. So Holkar plundered the territory of Jaipur and in 1804 the English declared war against him. That is, in 1804 the English declared war against Holkar. So in this war, Yashwant Rao Holkar, he was defeated by the British. Okay. So Yashwant Rao Holkar made an attempt to form a coalition of Indian rulers to fight against the British. So this Holkar, he tried to combine all the Indian rulers to fight against the British. So but his attempt was unsuccessful. The Marathas were defeated and they were reduced to vassalage and isolated from one another. So vassalage means it was the Marathas was led under the control of the British, and this Marathas were separated from each other. Okay. So next one, results. So the Marathas' power was gradually weakened. So what's the result of the second Anglo-Maratha War? The Marathas' power were gradually weakened. Then the English East India Company started becoming a paramount power in India. That is, the English East India Company, it became a supreme power in India. Next one, third Anglo-Maratha War. So this third Anglo-Maratha War was fought between the year 1817 to 1818. So what's the causes for this third Anglo-Maratha War? The third Anglo-Maratha War was the final and decisive conflict between the British East India Company and the Maratha Empire in India. It began with an invasion of the Maratha territory by the British East India Company troops. The troops were led by the Governor General Hastings, and he was supported by a force under General Thomas Bishop. So this third Anglo-Maratha war, it is the final war fought between the English East India Company and the Marathas. This war was led by the Governor General Hastings, and Governor General Hastings was supported by General Thomas Hislop. Okay, so what's the course of the second Anglo-Maratha war? So here the Peshwa Bajirao second forces, the Peshwa Bajirao second forces followed by those of Mudoji second Bonsal of Nagpur and Malhar Rao Holkar third of Indur rose against the British. So these three empires, they rose against they fight against the British. So Daulat Rao Sindhia of Gwalior remained neutral. That is, he remained neutral means he was between both the British and the Marathas. The Peshwa was defeated in the Battle of Kadaki and Korgion, and the several minor battles were fought by the Peshwa's force to prevent the capture. So Bonsal was defeated in the Battle of Sitabaldi and Holkar in the Battle of Madipur. So in this war, Bonsal was defeated in the Battle of Sitabaldi and Holkar was defeated in the Battle of Mahidipur. Okay. So next one, result of this second Anglo-Maratha war. So what's the result? So the Marathas confederacy was dissolved and the Peshwaship was abolished. So after this third Anglo-Maratha war, they dissolved the Peshwaship. Okay. Then most of the territory of Peshwa Bajirao again was annexed and became part of the Bombay Presidency. So most of the territories of Peshwa Bajirao again, it was annexed, that is captured by the British, and those territories it became a part of the Bombay Presidency. Then the defeat of Bonsal and Holkar also resulted in the acquisition of the Maratha kingdom of Nagpur and Indur by the British, because Bonsal and Holkar, they were defeated by the British. So the British, they take over the Marathas kingdom of Nagpur and Indur. Then Bajirao again, the last Peshwa of the Maratha, was given an annual pension of 8 lakh rupees. So the British, they give an annual pension of 8 lakhs rupees to the last Peshwa of the Marathas, that is Bajirao again. Okay. So this is the end of this three Anglo-Maratha wars. Next one, the British administrative organization in India. So now we are going to see about how the British, they administered our country India. Okay. So the British Indian administration was run by 4 principal institutions, that is civil services, army, police and judiciary. So what's the 4 principal institutions? Civil services, army, police and judiciary. So first let us see about the civil services. The term civil service was used for the first time by the East India Company to distinguish its civilian employees from their military counterparts. So translating law into action and collecting revenue were the main jobs of the civil service. So first, the term civil service, it is used to differentiate the employees of civil group and from the military counterparts. So their main work is to translating the law into action, that is they have to enforce the law, and the civilian employees, they have to collect revenue from the people. Okay, so this was their main job. So the civil service was initially commercial in nature, but later it was transformed into a public service. So in the beginning, the appointment of these services was the sole prerogative of the court of directors of the company. So on the earlier times, the civil employees, they were selected by the court of directors, that is those who are having the privilege, they will select the civil services. But the nominated civil servants indulged in corruption, bribery and illegal private trade. So Cornwallis, who came to India as Governor General in 1786, enforced the rules against private trade. He also raised the salary of the company servants, who became the highest paid civil servants in the world. Okay. So first of all, the civil service employees, they were selected by the court of directors. But those civil civilian employees, they indulged in corruption, bribery and some illegal private trade. So Cornwallis, he became the Governor General of India in 1786. He enforced the rules against private trade. He enforced the rule that no civil service employees should make any private trade by their own. Okay, they should not do any private trade. So then that is Lord Cornwallis, he also raised the salary of the company servants who became the highest paid civil servants in the world. He raised the salaries of the civil servants. Then Lord Wellesley, who came to India as Governor General in 1789, introduced the idea of suitable training of the civil servants in India. So Lord Wellesley, he came to India as the Governor General in the year 1798. Okay, so he introduced an idea of suitable training for the civil servant. That is, he made an idea that proper training must be given to the civil servants. Okay, then in 1800 he established a college in Fort William at Calcutta to provide training in literature, science and languages. However, the directors of the company disapproved of his action and replaced it by their own East Indian College established in Haileybury in England in 1806. So this Lord Wellesley, he introduced an idea of providing training to the civil servants. So for that in 1800 he established a college in Fort William at Calcutta to provide training in literature, science and language to this civil employees. Okay, but the directors of the company, they disapproved his action and they replaced this idea by East Indian College. It was established at Haileybury in England in 1806. Then the idea of competition for recruitment was introduced first by the Charter Act 1833. But the system of competition was these not nominated by the Court of Directors were not eligible to write the competitive examination. So after that, an idea of competition for recruitment, that is they create a new idea to recruit the civil employees through the competitive exam. Okay, but the members, those who are going to compete in the exam, must be nominated by the Court of Directors. Only those members, those who are nominated by the Court of Directors, can attend the competitive examination. So hence the system was called as nomination cum competition system, because the members first they has to be nominated by the Court of Directors, then after that only they can attend the competitive examination. So this examination was called as nomination cum competition system. The system of recruitment on the basis of open competitive examination was introduced in 1853. So this system was confirmed by the Government of India Act of 1858. So after that, the system of recruitment on the basis of open competitive, that is not by the nominated members of the Board of Directors. Okay, so this system was introduced in the year 1853 and this system was confirmed by the Government of India Act of 1858. So the maximum age of competitor was fixed at 23. So subsequently East India College at Haileybury was abolished in 1858 and the recruitment of civil services became the responsibility of Civil Service Commission. Okay, so after that they abolished the East India College, which was located at Haileybury, and the recruitment of civil services became the responsibility of Civil Service Commission. So by the regulation of 1860, the maximum age was lowered to 22 and in 1866 it was further lowered to 21 and in 1876 the maximum age was lowered to 19. So the Indian Civil Service Act of 1861 passed by the British Parliament exclusively reserved certain categories of high executive and judicial posts for the covenanted civil service, which was later designated as the Indian Civil Service. Okay, so this Indian Civil Service Act, which was established in 1861, it was later it was designated as the Indian Civil Service. So due to the lowering of age limit and holding of examination in London, it could be possible only for very few wealthy Indians to appear in the ICS examination. Okay, that is Indian Civil Service examination. So at that time the maximum age was lowered to 19. Okay, so due to that lowering age limit and the civil service examination, it was conducted in England. Okay, so it was possible only for few wealthy Indians to appear in this ICS, that is Indian Civil Service examination. So in 1869, three Indians, that is Surendranath Banerjee, Ramesh Chandra Dutt and Bihari Lal Gupta became successful in the ICS examination. That is, they have got passed in the Indian Civil Service examination, which was conducted in England. So later on, the Indians, they demanded to increase the age limit and to establish center for examination in India instead of England. So after that, the Indians, they demanded to increase the age limit from 19, and they have also demanded the British to conduct the civil service examination in India itself. Okay. Then in 1892, the minimum age limit for appearing for civil service examination was raised to 21 and the maximum was to 23. In 1912, a Royal Commission on Public Service was appointed. It was chaired by Lord Lincoln. This commission was 2 Indian members. This commission, it consists of 2 Indian members. So who are the 2 Indian members? That is G.K. Gokhale and Sir Abdur Rahim. So then in this commission, it also has 4 Englishmen. Okay, 4 Englishmen and 2 Indian members. So the commission published its report in 1917. So this commission, that is Royal Commission on Public Service. This commission, it reports their results in 1917. Lincoln Commission's recommendations partly fulfilled the demand for the Indian station in civil service. So in 1918, Montague and Lord Chelmsford recommended that 33% of Indians should be recruited in Indian civil service and gradually the number should be increased. So in 1918, the Montague and Lord Chelmsford, they recommended that 33% Indians should be recruited for the Indian civil services and their numbers also should be increased. Then in 1923, a Royal Commission on Public Services was appointed with Lord Lee and Lord Lee of Fareham as chairman. So after that, in 1923, a commission was set up, that is the Royal Commission on Public Services. It was appointed with Lord Lee of Fareham as the chairman. So this commission recommended that recruitment to all Indian services like Indian Civil Service, the Indian Public Service and the Indian Forest Service should be made and controlled by the Secretary of State of India. So what this Royal Commission of Public Services they recommended to recruit all the Indian civil services like Indian Civil Service, Indian Police Service and Indian Forest Service should be controlled by the Secretary of State. Okay. So the Lee Commission recommended the immediate establishment of a public service commission. So after that, the Lee Commission, it recommended the immediate establishment of a public service commission. So after that, an act was passed in the year 1935 and it made provisions for the establishment of a Federal Public Service Commission at central and provincial public service commission in various provinces. So what is mean by federal? This Act of 1935, it made 2 provisions, that is, it established a Federal Public Service Commission at the central level and the Provincial Public Service Commission at different provinces. So the provinces was also made for Joint Public Service Commission in 2 or more provinces. So although the main aim of this measure was to serve the British interest and it became the base of the civil service system in independent system. So this all provisions and act it was passed and the main aim of this is to serve the British interest and it became the base of the civil service system in independent India. Okay. So next one, army. The army was the second important pillar of the British administration in India. So the army was the second important pillar of the British administration in India. The East India Company started recruiting its own army which came to be known as Sepoy Army. So what's the army of East India Company was named? That is the Sepoy Army. Okay. So that Sepoy Army was trained and disciplined according to the European military standards and was commanded by European officers in the battlefield. So this Sepoy Army, it was well trained and disciplined according to the European military standards, and this army was commanded by the European officers in the battlefield. So during the early stage of the British rule, three separate armies had been organized in three presidencies of Bengal, Bombay and Madras. Okay. So during the early stage of the British rule in India, there were three separate armies which was organized in three presidencies, that is the presidency of Bengal, Bombay and Madras. Okay. So army had a great contribution in the establishment and expansion of British rule in India. So Indian soldiers were given less salaries and allowances than English soldiers. So in the British army, the Indian soldiers, they were paid very less wages when compared to the British soldiers. The British soldiers only given more wages. So the Indian soldiers were given less salaries and allowances than the English soldiers. Then in 1857, the Indians constituted about 86% of the total strength of the company's army. However, the officers of the army were exclusively British. So in 1857, in the Sepoy army, that is 86% of the sepoys were constituted by the Indians, but the main officers were only the British. The higher officials were only the British. For example, in 1856, only 3 Indians in the army received a salary of rupees 300 per month. Okay. So the highest rank of Indian could ever reach was a Subedar. So Subedar is the highest rank of the Indian soldier which was given by the British. Then after the revolt of 1857, the important changes were made in the Indian army services in 1858. So already you have known that in 1857 there was a great revolt which was made by the sepoys. Okay. So after the revolt, some important changes there were made by the Indian army services in 1858. So they increased the British troops and reduced the Indian troops. So also only English were appointed in artillery. What is meant by artillery? Artillery means large caliber guns. Okay. So before 1857, this critical artillery sections, they under most of the Indians in the army were, most of the soldiers in the army were Indians, and the critical department, that is the artillery department, it was given to the Indian soldiers only. Okay. So after the revolt of 1857, the British, they increased the British troops and they reduced the Indian troops. Indian troops means that is the sepoys. Okay. So then also only the artillery department was given to the British. Okay. So about the other two departments, that is police, judicial system, and about the subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse, we can see in our next class. Okay. So there is an assignment for you, that is in the back of this lesson you are having some 1 mark questions. Okay. So that is the choose the correct answer, match it, fill-ups, etc. Okay. So you have to read the lesson once and you have to answer this 1 marks by your own. Okay. Thank you, students.